Alright, so today I'm going to show you how I did this little top-down shooter. We're going to have some auto-aim, some spawned enemies, a win condition and a lose condition, how to get your health to show up when take damage. I'll also show you how to change the colors of it, and how to get this nice little menu here that keeps track of your remaining enemies. Okay, let's get started. And you know what, let's just show you the win condition. There you go, and it just resets. Alright. So first things first, I'll show you the level. Here I have a root node, that is a 2D node right up here for the root. I have a canvas layer up here that is so I can display the enemies remaining and the number. As you can see here, they're both two labels. I have the tile map. I took this tile map from online. I'll leave a link in the description for that. This is the player. Obviously, I'll tell you how I got that set up here in a minute. Here are the spawn points, so the enemy can actually spawn. It's a regular node, and attached to that node are five different spawn locations. So as you can see here, I just set up where I want the enemies to spawn. Here's the enemy spawn pool. When an enemy is selected from the pool, it's then added to the enemy pool node, and then it's spawned to one of the locations, and then the spawn timer, once it goes off, it will spawn a new enemy. Here is the player. I'm just going to hide this HUD for a second. Player is a character body 2D. It has a collision shape 2D. A player sprite was an animated sprite. Originally, I was going to have like different motions and stuff, but I just wanted this to be as simple as possible, so I just left it alone. Here I have all hands. What that is a 2D node that has 4 other 2D nodes attached to it for the hands. This allows me to place the magic rods on the screen in a particular spot, and they all take their offset from the main node up there. Here's a hitbox. It's just an area 2D with a collision shape. This is the HUD that I just showed you. It just displays the health bar. Nothing too crazy going on here. It's just a canvas layer, as you see here, and then I have a texture progress bar. I have two 16 by 16 sprites. They're both white. The way I changed the color was using the tint here. So the under is the bottom right here, and then this is the actual progress bar itself. As you can see, if I use the value, it will go up, and that's green, but I can change it to any other color that I want. I just chose green because that one looked the nicest. And then over here, I have left to right, as you saw. It's just going from left to right. And then the 9 patch stretch just takes that image and it just pulls it out so I can make it as long as I need to. Alright, next up here we have the components. This would be components that the player needs, such as health or ammo. I didn't do any of the ammo. Again, I just wanted to make something super simple. And then I have a health component, which handles all the health data and health management systems. And then down here I have a state machine for defeated. Originally I was going to have an animation play when the player died, and it would also handle the death state with the game over state. But again, I just made it super simple and just attached that to the regular old script. Over here we have the enemy script. It's also a character body 2D. It has a collision shape, an animated sprite, a hitbox, and a timer for the attack player. So this gives the player a little bit of time to move out of the way before they take damage. I didn't explain this, but the area 2Ds do have a signal. They do fire when something collides with them. I'll show you how that works in a second. When I go into the code, here is the projectile, which is the little fireballs that I made. It's just an area 2D with a collision and a regular sprite. The magic rod is essentially the gun for this game. It has a no 2D. This gives it a way to pivot and twirl around. An animate sprite. Originally, I was going to have it so it can change different colors depending on the fire pattern, but again, just decided to make it super simple. Calculate distance is for the auto aim. It finds the nearest enemy and then points to it. And then magic parent is just a node with no transform data on it. This gives the fireball a place to instantiate. That way, it doesn't take. It's not influenced by the magic rod's position. And then finally, well, I already explained the side. Okay, so now that that's done, let's go into the script, starting with the level. All right, so here we go to the script to the very first one, which is the level. As you can see here, I have three export variable. Excuse me. I have three export variables. I have the enemy amount, the minimum timer, and the set timer. What these are is right here. This allows me to select how many enemies I want within the level itself, the minimum timer, and the set timer. The set timer is the very first timer, so the enemy will appear within the very first enemy, excuse me, will appear in 2 seconds. And the mid timer is for the other spawns. So when that timer goes off, it's going to look for a range between the minimum time and the set time. So in this case, it's between 0 and 2. And then it's going to set that new timer. This just gives the spawn rates some random properties. That way they're not all appearing after 5 seconds. Some will appear after 5, some will appear after 2, some will appear after 1. It just depends on what this random is. And then after that, like I said, the spawn timer will fire and reset the timer. And then from here, place enemy at the spawn point, which would be one of these points right here. Excuse me, one of these points right here within the map. Okay, so that's what that's doing. Okay, next up I have on ready variables for the load enemy. That's the actual enemy scene. Get the spawn points, which are the points I just showed you. The enemy pool point, which is that node that the enemies will be attached to so they can enter the scene. The spawn timer, which is the actual timer, so it goes off. And then I have the enemy label right here, which is right here, enemies remaining, and the actual number itself. Then here I have the enemy pools within a list. It's an array, excuse me. What happens is I have all the enemies that I'm going to have it within level loaded at the beginning, and they're all stored into a list. And then I have a function that will randomly pull from this list and grab that enemy and put them into the scene. And then when that happens, they are effectively removed from this list. That way they can't be pulled again. And then enemies defeated. This is just a count. What happens is every time an enemy is defeated, this number goes up and it subtracts from the enemy's remaining number. So, so after I kill, I'll show you right here. So you can see up here, after I kill one, it goes up to 1. It says 1 minus 20, and then or 2 or 3 or whatever, and then it just updates. Okay, so next up we have the ready function. So here, enemy pool dot clear. What this does is just takes this enemy list right here and it just clears it. The win condition, when it's reached, or the defeat condition, or the loss condition, it just reloads the level. So this just clears that list out, so no old data is attached to it. This probably wouldn't be necessary if you change the level, but this is just in case. Here we have the spawn timer. This just starts off that spawn timer. Like I said, I have it set to 2 seconds, and then after that, it randomly generates another time between 0 and 2. And then after here is to get the label for the text. So this is just the enemy amount, and it has to be converted into a string. The labels can't read numbers for whatever reason, so no ints, no floats, no fractions, nothing like that. So that's what this str stands for. This means convert to string, and then put it in the parentheses, and then whatever's in there will go into a string. Okay, we have the pool enemies. So this loads the enemies within the beginning of the stage. So here, for the enemy pool, enemies in range of the enemy amount. So we have 20 here, and then it's going to go do this 20 times, grab an enemy, load it, instantiate, and then add it to the list. Then after that, I have here place enemy at the spawn points. This here, if the enemy's list or the enemy pool list isn't empty, meaning we have still enemies to draw from, it's going to run this code. So we have the enemy to spawn. It's going to go to that list. It's going to pick a random enemy. Then it's going to look in that enemy and grab a signal that I have set within that enemy's code. I'll show you that when we go to the enemy, which should be next. No, we're going to show the player. But once I'm done with once I get to the enemy, I'll show exactly what this is doing. Then once that signal fires off, it's just going to update the enemy count. Then here, the enemy pool points, it's just going to add to this right here, this enemy pool. That way it can show up in the scene. And then we need to get rid of that enemy from the list. So here it's going to find the enemy to remove. It's going to go to the enemy pool, find the enemy that was just spawned. It's going to look through the list of where he was at and get rid of him from that particular position. So now they can't be respawned. And then here it's just going to find those spawn position points right here. So it's going to go here, spawn points. It's going to randomly pick one, as you can see here. It says get the children, which are all the spawn points, and then pick a random. And once it finally picks one of the random ones, say like 4, grab that enemy, its global position, and set it right to whatever that position is at. Here you can see the update count. Like I said, enemies defeated plus equal 1. All it's doing is just subtracting from the amount of enemies that we have set at the beginning of the level. And then here, it's just updating that text. And then here we have the win condition, which if the remaining enemies is less than or equal to 0, await get tree, process frame, get tree, reload current scene. So what this is doing is it's waiting for the last frame to completely finish its process. And then when that's done, reload that scene that we're in. So reload this level. And then we have that spawn timer. So that's how this is doing. Okay, next up, the player. So here we have a couple of export variables. Oh, I guess there's only one export variable. We have, let's open this up more. The export variable active enemies.node. This is used for the auto aim, and it calculates the distance for the spawned enemies. Because the enemies are spawned later in the level, I have to do something called injection, because the player will need this to pass off to its rods or its guns or whatever it is, using as a firearm. And this injection here, I can just put in that enemy pool here. Then it can have access to this node, and it can look through it and find all the enemies or whatever happens to be in there. Anyway, at onReady variable, we have the get magic rods. This is just getting the rods that I showed you in the scene. This is the hitbox. These are all those hands. That is the node 2D that's over here. We go into the player. So it gets all its hands. We have the get health component. That way I can have access to the health component script. And then this health meter is the texture progress bar, so I can change the value of that bar. Here we have the max health, and then we have essentially the current health, but this gets set at runtime, so it won't be 0. Then I have the speed variable, which is 150, and then the rod child. I'll explain what that's for when I get there. Next, I have a dictionary. This dictionary is for the player's hands. So we have hands 1 through 4. It's going to tell me which ones are equipped, what the rod type is, and which hand position the rod should be in. So if I have one that's false, as you can see right here, and hit play, you can see I'm now missing a rod. So if you want to, let's say this is the first level of the game, they'll start off at 1, and then they have to work their way up to, getting themselves another rod. But yeah, so that's that. So I'll explain what the hand numbers are for. They're just hand IDs, honestly. And then the rod types, I didn't get to it, was to change the type of rod. So, if this was a fire rod, an ice rod, an electric rod, a time-stopping rod, whatever, that's what they were for. But again, I just wanted to make it super simple. Here in the ready function, we add the player to the group of player as well as the hitbox. That way the enemy can register. Can register that this is the player. Next up, we have the equipped rod. I'll get to that in a second. Just ignore this test. Originally, what I was going to do was pass in a rod's type, but again, I just didn't want to make it that complicated. Here we have the physics process. We have the enemy move. Excuse me, not the enemy move. We have the player movement. Call components, which in this case would just be the health component. Call auto aim. This checks if the player's defeated. So this was supposed to be in the state machine, but again, I just added it here. And then move and slide. So we're just going to go down. We will start with, what was it? Yeah, we'll do with the equipped rods. So here we have the equipped rods and the rod types. Again, didn't bother with this. Just made it super simple and just, what do you call it? I just ignored it and just put the rod, I hard coded the rod inside here. So here we have the current hand in equipable hands. So what this is doing is it's going through this dictionary here, finding out which hands have an equipped weapon. And if it's true, it's going to get the rod. It's going to instantiate it. And then within the total hands, it's going to find the current rod's hand. So this right here is getting the ID for these hands here. So computers start at 0. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3. So hand 1 is actually 0, hand 2 is 1, hand 3 is 2, and hand 4 is 3. That's why that's like that. But what this is saying is grab that particular hand. So in this case, this would be hand 1. So it's going to be the child of 0, which is the very first one, and then add the rod to that one. Then after that, we'll do the health component. Yeah, health component is just getting that the player's health component that's over here within the script. As you can see here, get current health. It's getting the health and the health meter. So within this function here, this is what it's doing. It's just setting the health for the player. So here, health component, get current health. And if you look through here in the health, see it says here, current health is equal to current health minimum. Let's go open this up here. Minimum health and max health. This is just to make sure it doesn't go below 0 and over 100. And then it says the health that we sent through to from here, since it was set at the beginning, so it should be at 100. So it's saying health, which is 100, is equal to the current health, and then the health meter will be equal to the health. So whatever health we currently are at will be reflected within the health meter, and then we just update the HUD. So here, this is how you know what, I'll save this for when I go through the actual health, but I'm just showing what that's for. I probably should have just blew through that and just say, yeah, this is just doing the health stuff. But yeah, then we have the auto aim here component. So here it's going 4 rods in the total number of hands dot get children. So what it's doing here is it's going to here, going to these rods, and then it's finding the children of this, which is all these hands. And that's saying if the rods get child count is greater than 0, meaning that these hands here have a rod attached to them. If it has a rod attached to it, calculate the distance, the enemy distance from the rod, and if the rod is not currently in mouse mode or mouse aim mode, if that's done, go to here, rods, get the child, the rod child. So this tells right here is at 0. It's just saying within here, because these magic rods have a node themselves, it needs to get the child. So here it would be, here I'll show exactly what this would look like. Let's see what's the magic rod here. That. So this is what it looks like. So it's saying get the hand right here. So it says rods, get child right here. Get this child. So that's why we're having this, because once this rod is loaded in, it's going to need access to the rod itself. And then go auto aim to the nearest enemy, and then calculate the enemy's distance, which is right down here. And then you can see here, calculate enemy distance. I'll show you what this is once I get to the magic rods. We'll backtrack. But from here, it goes to enemy, calc enemy distance, current rod. So whatever rod that we currently are at, we have the nearest enemy of null, and then we have the max distance of infinity. So this just checks to the end of time, or well, to infinity, and just never stops the distance. You can change this to like 100 or 300 or whatever. You can limit the range, but I just did infinity because this was just easier. Than just testing a bunch of different regions. Then here we have for current enemy and active enemies dot get children. What the active enemies is, if you recall, right up here, is that node right here within the level of enemy pool. So what it's doing right now is it's looking through that enemy pool, and it's saying getting all those children. So all those children are actually the enemies that have been loaded in, and it's saying check enemy distance, get the current enemy that we're looking through right now. So go to that enemy pool, get an enemy, and then check the global distance from the current rod. And then whatever that distance is, we need to check that distance to the max distance. So if the enemy distance is less than the max distance, make the max distance equal to the check distance, and then the nearest enemy will be the current enemy. So essentially what this is saying is if the enemy's current distance is less than the maximum distance that we are going to allow to check, that is the nearest enemy. And then it's going to return that. As you can see here, if we look at the calc enemy distance here, right here, this is sending the enemy to this auto aim. So this auto aim to the nearest enemy, it's going to get the, this will be the enemy, okay? So next up at that, we got the player movement. This is pretty self-explanatory. So we have get input, input.get vector, left, right, up, down, and then the velocity will be whatever that input is. So get input normalized times the speed. So whenever one of these inputs is pressed, it's going to give back a vector of 0 or 1, and then whatever that's going to be, it's going to times it by the speed. Okay, and then after that, we have player defeated. If the player ever dies, it just reloads. Okay, so next up, we have, let's just do the magic rods. Okay, so here we have an already variable for get projectile. That just gets the fireball from the scene, and then the magic parent, as I explained. We don't want the fireball being influenced by the position or location of the magic rod after it's been fired. Here we have a global rotation offset. I don't know why it needed the offset, honestly, but if I didn't put the offset on, it would just fire in the wrong direction. So it needs to be 90 degrees for whatever reason. And then here we have a mouse aim, which is the Boolean. It's equal to false by default, meaning that it's going to be at auto aim. But if it has the mouse aim, then it will follow the mouse and not have auto aim. Okay, next up we have physics processor. Here you can see if the input is the mouse fire, we have fire rod, and then we have the magic data, and then all rods in blue. What this is a global. What I was going to originally do was add like different data structures to this, but it was just more complicated than it needed to be. So I was like, screw all that. We have the attack power, but this is just kind of how you would maybe set that up. Here I have all magic rods. It's a dictionary. I have different types. So we have a green rod, a red rod, a blue rod. This was going to be ammo capacity. But again, I didn't do anything. And then we have the ammo amount, which would have been how much ammo was in the magic rod or the gun. And then here's its attack power. We have 1, 5, and 10. And then the spread tile, such as the green would fan out like a shotgun, but it'd be much weaker. The spread tile for this one, which was the red rod, would have been single, which would have been the way it fires now. And then we have the laser. So what this one would have done was it would fire like it would normally do, but it wouldn't disappear after it was fired and hit something. So it would be able to hit multiple enemies at once. But let's go back here. So as you can see here, the fire rod is taking the blue. If you can see here, we got blue data here. So we have the rod type here of blue. So it's saying here, new projectile, get the projectile instance, and then add it to the parent of the magic parent, excuse me. So that adds the fireball to the scene. And then we're saying get the global position is equal to the position that we're currently are at, which would be wherever the rod's currently located. And then it's going to take that rotation so the fireball could travel in the direction that it's currently facing. And then we just add it to the group of player attacks so it registers, or the enemy registers when it gets hit by it. And then here we have the projectile set attack power to the rod type, which is attack power, and we know that the rod type is blue, which means its attack power would be 10. Okay. Next up after that, we have the input for the spacebar, and this is just to toggle the mouse aim on or off. And if we are in mouse aim, you can see here, rotate and pivot around the mouse, and all that does is just look at, get the global mouse position, and it will essentially rotate and follow the mouse. As you can see here, we have auto aim to the nearest enemy, look at nearest enemy dot global position. If you recall, if we go back to the player, that auto aim to the nearest is right here. Right here, and like I said, this is the nearest enemy after it does its calculation. So this right here, like I said, gives us that enemy. It populates here. So whatever that enemy is, once it's returned, we'll go to the auto aim to the nearest enemy, and you can see here within the magic rod, it's look at whatever that enemy was. So that's how the auto aim is working. All right, and now I think that's everything for the magic rod. Next up is the projectile, which is pretty easy. Well, then here we have the speed of the projectile itself. This is what the projectile looks like, if you forgot. Speed of 10. We have the direction. This is which way it's going to go. We have the kill timer. If it never hits an enemy, after 180, I don't think it's 180 seconds, but after 180 frames, it'll just disappear. and then its default attack power is 0. But this gets set when the magic rod is instantiated, so that doesn't stay very long. Here we have the physics processor, or excuse me, physics process. I keep saying processor. We have our direction here, and this is so that it flies in the rotation that we sent it, and then here translate allows it to move in that direction. And then here, like I said, the kill timer, so once it hits 0, it just kills itself, or frees itself. Get power, again, this is for when the enemy gets hit. Whatever that attack power is will be deducted from its health bar. And then here, set the attack power during startup. It's going to find out which magic rod it is. Look to the data within this magic rod data here. And it's going to find either if its attack power is 1, 5, or 10. And then finally, once it enters, if there's an area that enters it, if that area is equal to the enemy, Q free. So once it hits, or once it comes to contact with an enemy, it just disappears from the scene, freeing up memory. Okay, and then finally, I believe this is the last one, I could be wrong, is the enemy. Okay, so with an enemy, as you recall, if you recalled, we have a signal called defeated enemy, or defeated count. If you recall from this level script here, this is that signal. It's just, when the enemy is instantiated, it's just connecting to this particular signal, and whenever that signal fires off, it updates the count. So that's that. Here we have an export variable for health and attack power. That's over here, so I can quickly change any variables that I want for it. So here we got max health and attack power. Its health is 10. Excuse me, its health is 100 and its attack power is 10. So when it attacks the player, it takes 10 damage from them, and the player has to lower it from 100 to 0 in order to kill the enemy. Here we have on ready variable for player, get tree, get first node in group player. Excuse me. What this is doing is it's just getting the current scene. It's looking through the node called player, and it's getting the first group. Since the player group is just one, it's always going to be the first one. The benefit for this is I never have to inject the player into any of the scripts. They automatically find the player on startup. The only problem with this is wherever the enemies are loaded in, the player always has to be higher in the hierarchy. So it has to come first before the enemies. Otherwise, the enemies have nothing to look for. So that's just a trade-off right there. Here we have the get hitbox, obviously what that is. Then we have the health, which is 0, and speed. This health is set, obviously, at the startup. So here we have health is equal to max health, which is right here, which is 20. But I have that set to an export. Yeah, an export, so that's actually 100. And then here we have the get hitbox, which adds it to the enemy, so the player and the fireballs will know when they're hitting the enemy, because it will look for that group. Here we have the physics process, target position. It's going to find the player's global position, and then it's going to subtract it to its own position, and then normalize that. And then that's going to give us, I believe it gives us a number of 1. And then from there, the velocity will be that target position times the speed. So wherever this position is, times their speed, which is 100, we'll head in that direction. Then here we have defeated. If the enemy ever reaches 0, it emits the signal, and then it queues itself free. And then we have the move and slide, which allows it to move. Here, attack player, find the player, get the hitbox of overlapping areas. So if it ever overlaps with an area, it's going to go through this loop. So here we have for entity in find player. If the entity is in group of player, damage the player. And then as you can see here, damage player, set damage, which would be whatever its attack power is. So this, in this case, it would be 10. So it's going to get the player, it's going to get its health component, and then the player will, it will call the player's take damage function, which would be in its health. So you would see here, take damage. I don't think I went through the health, so I'll have to do the health here in just a second then. So take damage here. It will do damage on the player. I'll explain all this when I go into the health, since I would just know that it's taking damage, or the player's taking damage. And after that, the player will trigger the damage function here. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is for the meter, but I could be wrong on that. I'm gonna find out right now. No, this just starts the timer. Okay, so That's what that's doing. It's starting the timer so the player can take damage. Defeat it. I already did that. Attack power, whatever that is. Receive damage. Essentially, whenever they hit a fireball, they subtract. And then here, if the player's attack, you can see here, receive damage, get the power of the fireball. And then finally, on attack player timer timeout, attack player. This again just gives the player some time. If you recall here, if I run into an enemy, I don't take damage immediately. It gives me a little bit of time before it starts draining my health. Okay, so that's how the enemy is done. So now we're going to go into the health component, and then I explain this. I should have explained this earlier, but I completely forgot, so let's do it now. All right, so here we have 3 colors. We have red, green, and yellow. What these are for is when the enemy, when the player's health is starting to get low, these bars will change color, as you can see here, and it finally goes to red. So that's what those are for. All I did was color dot from RGB A8, and then I just set the colors for which ones, and they have a nice little icon here to show you what that color is. Here we have 2 booleans. These 2 booleans here has been hit and hit cooldown started. Essentially, when the player has been hit, it will start this. Whenever the player, you know what? I'll just show it to you when I get to it. Current health here is what the player's current health is, and what their max health is. Then we have the minimum health. I think these are pretty self-explanatory. And then we have timers. So this is the hit cooldown timer. If the player gets hit, they have 30 frames before they can get hit again. And then here, it just resets once the timer hits the 0. So here we got the physics process. If hit cooldown started, so here, if this is ever started, start counting the hit cooldown timer. So we got minus equal 1. If the hit damn, I should really just change this. If the hit cooldown timer is less than or equal to 0, the hit cooldown started is now false, and then the timer just gets reset back to 30. Then after that, we have the get current health. This is called from the player, excuse me. So you can see here, this is where this function gets called from. And all it's doing is getting the current health. It's make sure the current health never goes under 0 or over 100. And then the health is equal to the current health. So that health 0 gets overridden to the current health, which should be 100. And then the health meter dot value will represent the current health that we have. And then here we have the update health. So it's taking the health meter. And it's just saying update. And then you can see here, if the current health is greater than 60, it's green. And then here we have the magic, we have the health meter tint progress, we have green. If the current health is less than 60, but it's still higher than 25, it's yellow. And then if it's 25 or under, it goes red. Then here we have to take damage. Whenever the enemy runs into the player, as you saw earlier, right here, where is it at? Take damage, should be around here somewhere. Here you go. Take damage, that's the damage for the enemy attack power. That's where this is being called. So here, if has been hit is equal to true, and the cooldown timer hasn't started yet, then they can take damage, and that's what this is doing. And then the cooldown timer is started, that way they can't get hit again until this timer resets. Then we have here, triggered the damage function. If not hit cooldown has been started, then we have the has been hit is equal to true, and that allows the damage to actually accumulate. And then here, the trigger death. If the current health is less than or equal to 0, current health return to the trigger death state. And if you remember down here, we have player defeated. If get health dot component trigger death is equal to 0, essentially if the current health is equal to 0 here, then reset the level because the player has been defeated. And that is everything. So this, like I said, is a very bare bones top-down shooter in the same vein as Brotato. I know I blew through this relatively quickly, so if you have any questions, then just feel free to ask them in the comment section, and I will get to you. I will also leave this project up on my GitHub, which I have to update the name. But aside from that, yeah, you can just pick apart the project from there and then, make heads or tails of whatever. And then even if there's something confusing, you can always ask me. So, with that being said, I hope you learned something. Thank you for watching, and until next time, my children, farewell.